Hey everyone, this is Leatherass with DragTheBar.com. Excited today to be making a video at 50 cent $1, playing 2 tables of 6 max, no limit. And today we're kind of going to focus on how to best exploit the 50 cent $1 opponents, as well as some general poker theory. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. We're going to start off with the 8-5 suited, and let's just start off and get after it and make a little squeeze. We'll make it 15. I don't have any reads or any numbers on any of these opponents at this time, but sometimes I'll start off real tight, sometimes I'll start off getting after it a little bit, trying to make some re-raises, make some plays. I think it's kind of important to not be too predictable. I mean, some of the best compliments you can get is when some people think you're a tight opponent, others think you're loose. That's it's kind of nice to kind of be a little bit unpredictable in that regard. Now, in this particular case with the 5-8 suited, it unfortunately did not work out. But I have no doubt that in the long run he's not always going to have a hand there, and the math will tell you that much, that he can't always have a hand there. And I made a play at it, and unfortunately it didn't work, but you just got to move on and not dwell on results too much. So here with the jacks, this part's a little tricky. This a lot of times would just be a standard re-raise and get all the money in against at the limits that I play. At these limits, however, I could probably, it's probably real close would be my guess. I would say that jacks would be a real marginal hand to get all the money in here. We are only 5-handed, which certainly is going to widen some ranges. Also, a lot of people like to make plays on me for videos, so I do have to widen the ranges of my opponents a little bit. This guy does seem like a regular, so I would assume that he does know at least a little bit something about me, and so I am actually just going to ship it all in and hope I don't run into queens, kings, or aces. So we got a flip here, and we get destroyed on the flop. So and then he kind of rubs it on the river. So that happens. We bomb off a stack real early, looking a little silly right now. But again, I'm almost kind of glad in a way that didn't work out, because oftentimes it's pretty easy to get a little frustrated and and things don't go your way. But the bottom line is, poker's just one long session. Where you play poker, if you're trying to make a career of this, you're going to play millions and millions of hands by the time it's all done. I've played 7 million hands of poker so far. You know in advance that there's variance in this game. I think we can all agree on that. And that we're not immune. No one's immune to it. So with that in mind, really, why are you upset? You knew this was going to happen. You knew that things weren't always going to go your way. And so I think it's sometimes important, when things don't go quite the way you want, to try and just maintain a level head and realize that this is part of being a poker pro. You're going to get off to bad starts. You're going to have great sessions that finish terribly. You're going to have sessions that start off terribly and finish beautifully. You're going to experience the whole array of things, and that's actually some of the stuff. Well, I'll stop that thought, pause that thought just for a second here, and I'll go ahead and make it $10, or excuse me, $5. I'll make it 5 times the big blind here with pocket tens. When there's a limper in the pot, I like to attack that with or without a hand. I will typically make a raise, and in this case I did have a hand, and so that made it all the better. We're going to make a kind of a probing, just slightly more than half pot bet here, and kind of start to, we're trying to establish where we're at. There's not a whole lot of good options. If you can check, but then some overcards can come or some nasty cards can come. If you bet, you're kind of wondering, like, yeah, man, which hand can really call me here? And so at this point, This is actually a pretty tough spot. I think we can check and probably fold to a substantial bet. And here with the king jack, I'm going to go ahead and raise this guy and try and take away the pot. And he did make a fairly substantial bet, and it's just pretty nasty card. I mean, if he had some junky hand like 5-7, you know, he got there. If he had a flush draw, he got there. If he has a queen, you know, we're drawn to, you know, 1 or 2 outs, and so, you know, we'll just live to fight another day. And we get raised back, and I'm going to go ahead and actually ship it in, and you know, really make him have a hand here. I just you know, this is a tough call for any hand. I don't think that he's going to have a deuce very often and just call out of the blind and then lead out. You know, so this really makes him have a hand. And if he calls me with a queen, you know, a hand like queen 10, well, let's just try and catch a king or a heart. So luckily it worked out there. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet the A10 suited. Slightly, this is one not standard. You can fold. You can, you know, I wouldn't call. I don't think you want to call out of position with A10 suited and expect to do so profitably, unless you're against a really weak opponent that you just have to get in the pot with, which that's obviously perfectly understandable. But otherwise, I like to just kind of fold or 3-bet him, and I'm typically folding him, but you know, you want to 3-bet him sometimes, and just kind of, you know, we've been aggressive so far, and you know, we'll stay that way. As far as the limper, just to get back to that point with the pocket tens, what I try to do is, you know, I'm basically just trying to take down the pot right there, making it 5. If I get called, obviously in that case I've got a really good hand. Now if I didn't have a good hand, the theory is that, you know, he just limped in, he's probably not that strong. So you can just oftentimes just make a raise and take down the pot. And if he doesn't fold right there, and you could typically make a half pot or 2/3 pot bet on the flop, and certainly take it down often enough to show a profit. So if you're, you know, if you make it 5 there and you know he calls, then you know you can make it 6 into the $10 pot on the flop, and you know he does excuse me, he doesn't need to fold you know, too super often to make that profitable. I would guess something around, you know, if he folds a little over 1/3 of the time, then you've made a profit, and that's if you never made a winning hand. You just made the bet and you didn't have cards and you were just risking, you know, $6 to win $10. You know, it doesn't need to work probably too much more than 1/3 of the time. But I apologize if my math's a little off. I'm not too much of a math-intensive guy. I kind of play a little more intuitively, so, and I, you know, sometimes get picked on a little bit for that, but that's okay. I you know, there's a lot of great coaches that are really strong in math, and so, you know, that's obviously that's why we have so many great coaches here at DragTheBar. So if you get one that, if you want a little more of the math-heavy stuff, you know, check them out, and you want a little more of the intuitive stuff, you know, I might be a half-decent option for that as well. So the other point that I kind of paused my thought there was with you know, getting off to a bad start, or you know, just the overall concept of getting upset at variance. Now I'm going to qualify what I'm saying by well, I'm going to start off by saying that I'm a hypocrite. I'm absolutely a hypocrite. I'll bitch and moan as much as the next guy when bad variance happens to me. You know, when I go on a 20 buy-in downswing and lose, you know, 30,000-40,000 bucks or something, it's not a lot of fun. And I will say that I've done a really great job, especially over the last 12 months, of really just kind of letting it roll off my shoulders. But I would be a hypocrite if I told you that you know, that stuff doesn't bother me whatsoever. I think all you can really do is strive to not let that bother you, but I think anybody would be lying to you if they said it's, you know, it makes no difference then whether they lose 20 buy-ins or not. In fact, I would question that person's competitive desires. I mean, one analogy I can use, although he's a little bit of a butt of a lot of jokes right now, is Tiger Woods. You know, I've always had a big, well, I've been a big fan of what he's able to do on the golf course and his mental game and stuff like that. And even Tiger Woods will throw a club from time to time. So I don't think any of us can can honestly say that you can go on a 20 buy-in downswing and not even think about it. But with that in mind, as poker players, we know in advance that we're going to experience bad variance. We're going to have 20 buy-in downswings, probably 30 and maybe even 40 buy-in downswings at some point in our careers. And so, really, why are we? Well, I'll pause and say I raised the ace-4 because I felt it was a good enough hand to open with, and I'll bet into that flop, and I'll probably. Well, we'll keep firing because we picked up a straight draw here, and we have an overcard, and we can just hope that he folds. And at this point, I'm just not optimistic that he's going to fold. There wasn't really any kind of a scare card. He might take the showdown if he has a hand just like a king-7 with the king of hearts that he was calling with. He might just check, and I can still win with ace high. But in any event, I didn't see a whole lot of other options there than to just fold. But in any event, we know that there's going to be variance in poker. I mean, every poker player, of course, we know that that's part of the game. And so one of the questions, or one of the tests that Jared put me to, and Jared's my sports psychologist, as some of you may know. He helps me with my mental game in poker. And Jared would point out to me and he would say, so do you know there's going to be variance in this game? And I would say, well, of course, absolutely, I know there's variance in this game. And he would say, okay, so when it happens, why does it bother you? And I would be like, well, it's just no fun to have bad variance happen to you. And so I would say, and he would say, but you already know it's going to happen. Why would you get upset at something you already knew was going to happen? And I would be like, darn it, that's a good point, dang it. So he'd kind of make me feel dumb about it, in a good way, and that was where I really turned the corner. It was just like, why would you, when you know something's going to happen and you're 100% sure of it, why would it surprise you? Like, why would you let that bother you? So in any event, here at the queen 3 is suited, I felt like I would get check raised off of a lot of draws. Now the open of the hand was debatable as well, but typically queen 3 suited, all open there from the cutoff. So on the flop, I didn't want to get raised by a lot of just random hands trying to push me off, and so I opted to kind of check back here, which again is debatable. And now that I caught 2 pair on the turn, I'm going to go ahead and raise the turn for value. And however, if he can come back over the top, I think at this point we can safely fold. But this offers my hand a little bit of protection in the event he has just some junky hand with like a jack in it. I can get rid of his gut shot. And also I can maybe try and get some value from a hand like King Jack that might pay off. Now if he can come back over the top of that, I don't think he's just going to randomly do that as a bluff. And so I would give him credit for a hand better than my 2 pair there. I would give him credit for a King Queen or flopping a set or a Jack 10 or something like that. Just something that beats my hand, because I don't see guys come back over the top there really ever at these stakes with a hand worse than mine. So, with respect to what Jared was saying, I think 5-3 suited here we can most certainly fold. 3 betting would be better than calling, I would say, but I typically would just fold there almost every time. Yeah, so with respect to what Jared taught me, I mean, that's a big key. If you're going to totally go on tilt every time you have a bad session and lose more than what you should have lost because you were upset, or there's life EV too. We all want to have good lives, and if it's it's not all about dollars and cents. I mean, nobody wants to sit there and stress themselves out all day long, I'm sure. So you got to keep that in mind too. Like, why get upset at something is going to happen? I mean, if you knew, like, if the sun coming up tilted you, but and you got up and upset every single morning when the sun came up, it'd be like, all right, dude, like, you knew that was going to happen every single time. So That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that's really kind of how silly we are as poker players. Okay, so here with the ace-9, I'm just going to go ahead and give it up here. Could 4-bet as a bluff. I don't like calling too much. So I just opted to fold. And here with the 6-7, I raised the flop. It's becoming much more unlikely now that he has a 9 because it paired the board. So I'm actually going to try and check shove because of his stack size and try and get a hand. You know, he might have a 6-8 or a Jack-10, flush draw, 8-10. I'm willing to go broke to if he flopped, you know, or if he's turned 3 9s or flop pocket deuces or something like that. So I'm going to ship it in now, and we'll just hope for the best. And do keep in mind he is short stacked. This would not be a good play if he was full stacked. If he was full stacked, I most likely would have just bet the turn. So we pick up the pot there, which is great. And here with the 6-7 suited, he leads right out. You know, he potted it. I don't try to mess with guys that pot it too much, unless, of course, it's a regular that I'm playing against and I know that that's his game. But when weaker players pot hands, it tends to either mean an outright bluff or a big hand or a big draw. And at that point there, I just don't see him. It's not a good board for him to bluff. Like, he has no history, or we have no history at this point. Why bluff out of position into 2 people? So I'm going to put him on a big hand or a big draw, neither of which makes any sense for me to continue with the hand against that range. So I opted to just go ahead and fold there. And here with the king 4, I'm just going to go ahead and open muck there. That's not really a good hand there. So that's pretty much going to be a fold for me there most of the time. Yeah, and for those who are not familiar with my coaching videos, who've not seen my coaching videos in the past, first of all, I want to say, thanks for watching my video. I'm really flattered that you would do that. Please do hit me up in the forums. If I don't mind saying so myself, I'm a very helpful person. I like to help people. It's the reason I make videos. Poker has treated me really nicely, and so in that respect, making videos is not my primary source of income. Playing poker is. But it means a lot to me to be able to help people out, and I enjoy that whole thing. I enjoy kind of giving back in a way, and obviously I do get paid for making coaching videos. I'm not going to lie about that. However, it's it's not again it's something I more or less I do for the most part out of my desire to help others and to follow people's progress. There's a little bit of a selfish nature to it too. I like watching people go from point A to point B and to point B to C and D and E and so on. And so PM me, hit me up in the forums, ask me questions. I'm here at your disposal. I mean, you guys are all customers, and I'm here to help you out with your games, and that's my job, and it's a job I love. And please take advantage of that. I honestly, in the past, I've gotten a lot of messages. I've helped a lot of people on the forums. I mean, it's in many, it's deep into the thousands. It's literally, thousands and thousands of people. However, a lot of that is due to the fact that I've been coaching for so long. I still think, and oftentimes oftentimes kind of surprised at times that I don't get more questions, because I know that I think a lot of people, maybe they don't want to write because they feel like they might be taking my time, or they might be hesitant for their own reasons. And I want to be here to say, feel free to hit me up as much as possible. It's what I'm here for. I enjoy doing it. Please do write me. Please do seek my help in all these things, and I'm really looking forward to it. So anyway, that's my little spiel on that, and I really look forward to helping you guys out. As I was kind of rambling there, There's, I missed a few things. All these things were fairly standard. I don't think anything was too super close, but if there was something that I glossed over that you thought might have been a questionable play, again, feel free to hit me up in the forums. Now, King 2 suited against short stack opponents. Oftentimes, I just like to keep my decisions simple, because a lot of times I'm playing a lot of tables, and I don't want to deal with short stackers. And I know that King Deuce suited, well, not into pocket aces it won't be, but King Deuce suited you can shove profitably versus the range of hands that they would have there in the big blind, because he can basically have any two cards. Now he often happen to have, as we know, the only two or the best two cards there, so that didn't work out, and I maybe looked a little foolish there. But the point is that you can just rather than kind of grinding, it might be technically better to just raise there and maybe fold if he shoves all in, or to make some type of read on him, or try and play a little poker post flop with him, because typically short stackers don't know what they're doing very much post flop. And so but I like to just keep it simple, and I know it's profitable to do what I did, and I just leave it at that. Short stackers are not the most important piece of the game to figure out, so you just kind of want to not make any egregious errors against them. Here with the 8-9, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. He's really loose, but which would argue for a 4-bet. However, I see this guy calling 4-bets, and now I'm stuck here with 8-9 offsuit, and he's not much of a folder, and it's just going to be, I'm just kind of creating a big mess for myself. I'm probably not going to flop a very big hand. I probably will get to the flop and not know if I should make a bet and try and still take it down, or do I just give up. I'm going to be stuck in kind of a funky spot, and there's not a these funky kind of spots are not where you make your money anyway, and so I just didn't really see a lot of good options. Now, if he was a guy that re-raises a lot, but then he won't play a super big pot with you unless he has a really big hand, then those guys, of course, you just want to 4-bet all day long. But at this point, I don't really have that read. I just know he's loose, and I don't, in general, he just tends to not fold from what I can tell. So with that in mind, I just, I put in 3 blinds at that point. Let's just kind of move on. So here we have ace-10 in the big blind, and predictably Wildo raises, and so we're probably just going to go ahead and re-raise him back. In fact, somebody might re-raise him first, and then I might 4-bet them, which is a decent play as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and raise. I like to stay aggressive. It's not a great 3-betting hand, but it's this particular guy, I just don't want to let him kind of run over the table, so I'm going to be inclined to kind of get after him a little bit. So pretty standard raise there. We got some pretty aggressive guys at this table. We're getting some numbers coming in on my Holdem manager here, and we have this guy Lord. I don't know how to say his last, the latter part of his screen name there, but he's a 3628, and Wildo is a 4438. So this is a battle of a couple of pretty aggressive guys here. Although with that being said, I'm apparently a 33-28 on the table on the right and a 31-31, so I guess I'm not exactly Mr. Passive either. So ace-6 there. Ace-6, it's close. It's close for me. Either way it would have been fine. Raise or fold. and I'm going to go ahead and make it 5 times the blind there against the limper on table 2. And so you know, for reference, table 1 for me will always be the table on the left, and table 2 will be the table on the right. So it's as if you were reading a book. You'd go left to right. So table 1 on the left, table 2 on the right. So we flopped gin, basically. Not entirely. I guess pocket 2s would be nice, but tempting to check back here because TR is a little short. The spade draw, it would be nice to get check raised by a spade draw, but that is kind of a little unlikely. Actually, I am going to check and slow this one down a little bit. So a pretty benign turn card, and so I'm going to go ahead and raise the turn here and try and start to get some value. Basically, I mean, the reason behind slowing it down is not that you want to generally slow play big hands, because that's actually the last thing I would advise. It's just when you get the deck so crippled and then you have a really aggressive opponent in the blind who is probably going to fire out and as a bluff, it's nice to kind of pick up that money, whereas well, we're going to make sure, hopefully we don't get super coolered here, but I'm never folding this. Wow, so pocket 4s. So again, that's exactly why you would want to slow play a hand. It was a very unique case. So I can't stress enough for those watching this video, slow playing is generally a bad idea. It really isn't a good idea too often. In this particular case, I had an opponent in the blind who I felt was prone to do something just like what he did. And so I wanted to give him that opportunity. If I bet the flop, it's real easy for him to just fold pretty much most of his entire range. If he had another 9 in it, if he did have another 9, I'm going to get all his money anyway. And I'll get it eventually. And if he had pocket 2s or something, I was going to go broke eventually anyway in the hand. So there was no getting around that. You could say, hey, if you bet, you could let a spade peel off. Well, I'm not going to raise and play back at him really hard once the spade does come if he keeps betting. And so in that event, in the event that happens, had I just gotten all the money in, he would have hit his spade, in anyway, and he would have stacked me, so I'm actually losing less in those cases. So it was a pretty unique situation. And here's another pretty, well, this is just a no-brainer situation. I'm going to make it about 16. Pretty healthy squeeze, and I'm getting it in with Wildo for sure. If I run into jacks through aces, then so be it. But this, frequently as this guy plays a pot, I'm certainly willing to stack off for 100 blinds with pocket 10s to a guy who's going to get it in with pocket 4s like he did there. So anyway, if I did, if any part of what I'm trying to say is confusing, don't hesitate again to ask in the forums. I'm trying to explain it as best I can. And here on the flop, this really kind of stinks, but I got to make some type of bet and try and still take it away. And hopefully he'll have a hand like pocket 9s with no diamond or something. I mean, that's kind of the hand that I put him on a lot of times, is and some type of fairly strong ace or like a pocket pair, like 7s, 9s, stuff like that. In any event, he's telling me he does have some type of ace, but he doesn't seem too excited about getting it in. I just don't want to continue this charade. Really, I don't think I have a whole ton of fold equity to fire the turn. I think that's spewy. I could shove the turn and get him to fold probably 10 or 20% of the time, in my opinion, but I need him to fold like 50% of the time. So I do think it's a losing play to try and take him down on the turn. I think for the most part he's going to go with the hand once he calls the flop there. I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to be sophisticated enough to float call me with a hand that isn't very good with the intention of betting if I ever give up. when you play against opponents who do have that in their range, then you have to adjust your thinking a little bit, but I don't identify this player as someone who would do something like that. So here at the ace-10 off, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. Under the gun, I'm going to get dominated by a lot of aces. I'm going to lose money when an ace flops a lot, so I like to stay away from those types of hands against tight openers under the gun. Now ace-10 suited I'd probably play, because now I've got the suitedness, and I can make a big hand, and I pretty much always will play a suited Broadway type of hand against a raise from any position. So Jack-10 suited, Queen-Jack suited, King-Queen suited, basically never folding those hands to just a pre-flop raise. But offsuit changes a lot of things. So ace-10 offsuit here on table 1 was certainly a good enough hand to raise, and I get re-raised, and that's really not a good thing. I tend to just not really mess with people who are 3-betting an early position raiser, and I'll just get rid of it right away. People like to do their most aggressive stuff and get all tricky around the button a lot. They tend to not do it a whole lot from under the gun, but if they do, you just adjust. I mean, this is nothing I'm saying is really ever a hard and fast rule. A lot of times people ask me like, "Hey, aren't you giving away information that's can be exploited?" Telling people that you just fold all your marginal hands to 3-bets when people when you start off by raising out of the gun. I mean, I don't think I am, because first of all, almost everyone does that at the high stakes game. Secondly, is that if guys did try and exploit that, I'm going to notice it. I mean, it's not going to take long to figure it out, and so you just make adjustments, and that's what poker's about. So here with 8-8-4, not really much going on that flop. Hopefully I can just bet, I bet a little bit more than 6. This bet 7 this time, so about 2/3 a pot, and just took it down. So that's more illustrative of what I'm saying, is you just take kind of a mediocre hand, raise him, bet the flop, you make him have a hand. And we know statistically he's not going to have a hand often enough. So, I may not be a math guy, but I know enough to know that you don't flop, pairs every time. So, I'm just kind of banking on the fact that, he has a weak hand to begin with. The board didn't really show much. Just bet the flop and take it down. If he calls the flop, you might want to bet the turn too, and try and take it down that way. It's kind of subjective and based upon what you know about your opponent. So same deal here with King-7 offsuit. Hopefully the guy doesn't have pocket aces again. So we are running pretty aggressive here. It looks like we're playing about a 30-29 if you average the two tables together. It's pretty aggressive. It's on the aggressive side. And the numbers don't converge perfectly, but over this short of a sample size. But I would suspect I would probably play about this level, about a 30-29 at these stakes, because people limp a lot and they give you more opportunities to play pots. So probably I'll play a little bit tighter than that. Probably a 28-25 or 28-26. So I only made it a min raise on table 2 because the short stacker in the blind, you don't want to create a situation where you make it 4 times the big blind and then have to fold when the guy shoves. Because the hand like 9-10 off. So here I'm going to make it a half pot bet, and I'm going to kind of tempt him to play back at me a little bit. I want to just min raise the flop, make a tiny bet on the, or min raise pre-flop, make a tiny bet on the flop. Let him try and come after me a little bit. Now, I have a couple options here. I could bet the turn and fold to a check raise, or I could just check behind and then call basically any river and just try and get the showdown. I don't think this guy, after getting picked off on his bluff, is going to try and do it again. So I think at this point I can bet and fold to a check raise, because I do want to protect my hand. I don't want to give some junky hand that he might have peeled the flop with, like King 7 with a 7 of clubs to like make a club or something silly. So that, you know, I do have a pretty good hand. I mean, I could be value betting and getting money out of like hands like pocket threes or something. At this point, this would be a touch thin on the river, and against a guy who might just do something stupid like, you know, if I make a half pot bet, check raise me and put me in a 6 spot, I think I can just take the showdown here. I mean, I might be value betting myself a lot of times too when he's slow playing flushes or 6 or something. So yeah, and he was. I mean, he had a full house, so it was a little too thin to value bet there. You know, maybe ace 10 or king 10. I think about. I might bet those hands because then I can get a jack 10 or a 10-9 or some hand to look me up. But I thought it was a little thin. I'm checking behind those hands a lot, especially against a kind of an unknown wild player, and I don't want to try and figure out whether he's bluffing or not on the river and just create a big pot for no really great reason. So, you know, I think you can just kind of check behind there. So we'll run this. We'll play for about another. We'll play for another orbit, and we'll call it a video. And I think that we got some good stuff we hit on today. I've probably been a little bit of a chatterbox, so in the event you did pick up a number of things, one piece of advice I would give you is to not try and implement everything right away. Try and take this video. You might want to rewatch it or rewatch parts of it and kind of wrap your head around some of these things a little bit. And what I like to do, because I'm not sure how much any of you guys know about any of my story or where I kind of came from with poker or anything, but I did come up through the training sites as well. I was a low limit grinder, trying to make ends meet, watching videos, trying to improve. And one thing that and the videos were absolutely the number one reason I got to where I was. And 4-7 suited, we'll take a little break here and not play that hand. But anyway, what I used to do is I would take notes, and I would actually put a post-it on my screen. So I'd put like, okay, I need to 3-bet loose aggressive opponents more. I need to not be a sissy and fold every time someone makes a river bet, or whatever little kind of funky little thing I came up with that I learned from the videos. Here at the 6 deuce, I'm actually going to make like a blocking bet, and so I'm going to bet the 6 and just bet $1. And basically what I'm trying to do is, if I check, he might bet the river and I won't know what to do. So I'm just trying to like keep the pot real small, and I don't think he has a hand that wants to check raise me. So I'm just trying to get to showdown. And so what I did is bet $1 on the turn there, which would prevent him from like making a $3 or $4 bet on the river, which would be a tougher decision for me. And so now I can just check and take the showdown and get the added benefit when you are ahead to pick up an extra $1. So that's the logic there. But yeah, so what I was kind of getting at was, don't be afraid to 7-5 suited. I'll just fold here. Or excuse me. What I was getting at was to make post-it notes or whatever works for you. That's just what worked for me, so I've mentioned it. But whatever works for you, and whatever you've picked up, don't try to implement 5-10 different things right away. Stick to 2 things at most, and don't move on to the next thing until you've got these 2 things. And so here I made it $3 with the ace-jack suited, and while you don't want to, create a tell for yourself, I did make it 3 because I wasn't worried about the short stacker shoving on me, because I knew, excuse me, I knew I would call him. I'd be certainly willing to get it all in with him. Here with the tens, this is a spot here where a lot of people would call or do something different than what I'm doing right now, which is folding. But I think you just stay out of trouble. We're out of position. Our hand is not great. Somebody's got a hand that has an advantage or is at least equally as good or better than ours. I mean, somebody's got at least 2 overcards or a bigger pair or something. So it's not like we're giving up. We got outplayed or we're giving anything up there. So I think you can just get away from that. With the ace queen off here, I'm going to go ahead and re-raise. And typically in these spots, you are not willing to get it in pre-flop, but if you do flop top pair on a non-coordinated flop, you can just go ahead and be confident. You can just play it for stacks. So for example, the flop is queen 8-4 with no flush draws, or even if there was a flush draw, I would bet and I would be willing to get all the money in. So now that he re-raised me back, I'm just going to go ahead and pitch it. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of the hand there. I don't really think that we're a little bit deep, like 130 blinds. I don't think it's going to be profitable to shove there. A big mistake a lot of people make is calling in those spots. It's just horrible. I can't express to you how bad that is. And I see it from good players at 5-10, and it's just a leak. I don't care what they say. It's just a leak. You just don't need to be getting involved in those spots. So, great players have leaks. Everyone has leaks. I have leaks. So, I wouldn't be picking on anybody if they're a high-stakes player watching this and, thought I was crazy for calling it a leak. I'm confident it's a leak. I don't think it would be too disagreeable to say that would be a leak. And here with the threes, I'm probably stuck calling now because I'm getting 1.5 to 1, and he's kind of a loose short stacker, and he's shoving over the top of a loose raiser. So we're just going to hope to flip a coin here. And, well, we got pair over paired, but that's the way it goes. And here at the aces, I could just call and raise any flop and be willing to get it all in, or I could 4-bet now. I think I'm going to go ahead and just call this time and get it in on any flop. Well, that's one flop where you probably are better off just calling when he bets here on the flop, because, let's face it, he's very unlikely to have a flush draw, and he's pretty much drawing dead in most cases here, or has like 2% equity, with a hand like ace-jack, he has no equity. A hand like ace, if he has a hand like king-queen, really is the only thing that has equity, or something with like a backdoor flush draw. It's just not a good, he's unlikely to have much, let's put it that way. And if he does have an ace, he's going to, he'll eventually stack off. If he has ace-queen, ace-king, I'll get his money. So I guess I do take some risk if he does have an ace-queen with no hearts, and maybe if a bunch of hearts came or something, he'd get away from it. But I think that's about the only scenario I can envision. I'd rather just let a hand like, I think it's just much better to let a hand like king-queen maybe consider bombing off a stack here, or shoving the turn, or doing something to win the pot. I'm going to kind of tease him a little bit here, and I'm going to bet at like $13. It's just a little something. It might kind of piss him off and make him just do something crazy. A lot of guys do that. It might actually make him, he might actually think like, oh man, maybe he just has a flush draw and he's trying to steal it, and I will go ahead and go with a hand like pocket kings or something like that. He might also feel like I might have a flush draw, and he might peel with a hand like pocket jacks here that has no equity. So that's a possibility as well. I would prefer if he just called with a 6. That'd be really nice. And here with the ace of hearts, I'm going to just go ahead and bet, and I'm going to get it in. And ace high flush draws on non-paired boards, I'll get him on all day long for 100 blinds happily. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and shove the rest in. I mean, I don't really. If he has an ace, I think he'll call, and if he doesn't, I think he'll fold to most any bet. So, and this is a weird bet here, but I actually have to call because this looks really drawy. I mean, there's no hand where I'm like terrible against. I mean, I have decent equity against the set, and so this looks a lot like a Jack 10 or a King high flush draw or something like that. And so all these things combined, you know, even against a hand with just a queen in it, I have the ace and the flush draw. I mean, it's just a slam dunk call. So that, not a great spot. Well, just got him there, so that's great. So maybe we can win the last two, play the last two hands of the session and stack people. Oh, we just did. That was kind of fun. So, well, I'm obviously pleased because I just made money in those last two hands. You know, and go have a nice dinner and a bottle of wine on that, no doubt. But I'm actually more excited that the session just turned that way because it just kind of circled back to prove my point that I made earlier in the video, which was, you know, you just got to hang in there. I just lost a bunch right at the outset of the session, and you know, I was maintaining a good attitude like I was advising everyone do, and just making good decisions, and I came out a winner. So that's kind of nice. Anyway, really appreciate you guys watching the video. Really excited to work with all you guys. You know, I'm new here. This is obviously a new site at this point, and it's being one of my first videos. And I'm just really pumped. I can't wait to help everybody. I can't wait to get in the forums. It's going to be a great place to call home. Just a great company, great bunch of guys. And I suspect a bunch of really cool members that are going to be watching these things. So please, please, you know, hit me up and feel free to pick my brain. Use me as you wish. So till next time, good luck at the tables.